afterwards, but also managing it so it doesn't happen and that's always a good thing. But first, I know it seems basic. I'll go through it quick because most people know, the what and why of swarms, but it is worth repeating for people, especially if you're not as familiar. So why do they swarm? Well, it is reproduction. There's two different ways that bees reproduce. The queen bees increase one bee at a time, and then the whole superorganism also splits. And that's really, the swarm is a secondary way of honeybees reproducing. Now, the swarms contain the young bees often. The younger ones, the older foragers, they tend not to go with the swarm. And queens, sometimes just the original mated queen, you have the primary swarm with that, normally the largest one of the season. The secondary swarms would be one virgin or multiple virgins. We're talking, some of the super swarms can have up to like 66 virgins in it. And
wow.
In commercial places, commercial operations, oftentimes they just start clumping together more and more. It's pretty amazing to see that. Most of us here have a little less sizable operations, so it's not, you normally don't get that big. And they also contain occasional drones for the ride and mites. Fun, so we're also reproducing mites and sending them out. So when you catch swarms, be aware you might also be catching some mites. Now, swarms oftentimes happen when critical mass is reached. And so there's signs for that, which we'll go over. And they, quite frankly, they have too much stuff. They need to move out into a larger house. So the bad thing about swarms is that what's left behind is oftentimes weakened. And you can have critters that don't normally cause problems in a healthy, strong colony, all of a sudden have a chance of really wreaking havoc in the remaining colony that is bereft of their young population. And it can also cause robbing. And obviously that means $. Okay, so how many people have actually been inside a swarm, like as it's happening? It is an awe-inspiring event. And there's nothing you can do. It's the most maddening thing, but it is very cool. But oftentimes, if it happens from your colonies, it's also a very big bummer. So I know lots of people love collecting. It's a lot of fun. You can also catch some sheriffs with the swarm. Playing. That's Steve Rapaski has. One of the apiaries is actually right on airport property, so he gets the fun press time when he has his swarms collect on very odd places, and then he says, "Yes, I collect swarms. Yeah, I came from your colony, buddy." Give him a hard time. Also, people like collecting swarms on their body. I think this is really a hoot and a half. Just in case you're wondering, this gentleman actually has face mask on and goggles, so just in case you're wondering. Now, this is the easiest kind of swarm. Everyone's seen these. It's like, oh yes, down low where you just kind of brush them off, or and they just march right in. Swarms also go into weirder places, and all of a sudden, you're on a big ladder, and a fall from that doesn't hurt the bees. Us, it's a little different. And of course, swarms that go one step further, they think that our domiciles are perfect for them because we heat it for them. Oh my gosh, how cool is that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the problem is a lot of these are preventable. And this is thousands of dollars sometimes for these homeowners to get these colonies out. So one thing you'd have to know, it's so important, don't underestimate quick bee math, okay? So here's a way of looking at it. So one worker is basically, when they're emerged, there's 2 capped worker cells underneath them, okay? So reverse that. So if you have a frame of capped brood that is just beautiful and you're looking at it going, oh, this is awesome. When this emerges, remember the 2 to 1, it's gonna be 2 frames covered in bees within 2 weeks. Okay, so that is massive growth. So if you only go to your apiary or colonies once a month, you're missing a big window there. So this also says, okay, 10 frames cap brood, wow, I've got a great colony here. I'll let them make honey, and you walk away. Well, you all of a sudden have 2 boxes of bees, and if you didn't give them that space, well, you may not have that when you come back. So that's the brood. So quick bee math with super ingrowth. So it's really kind of interesting. You look at these open nectars cells, and 4 of them converts to 1 condensed honey, okay? So they move that around quite a bit. They'll move them left and right and everywhere. So they need space to cure that nectar to give us our final product, right, that we steal from them. So if you only give them foundation as a super box and no comb, then they're forced to backfill and steal from the queen's laying space, and that can actually force them to swarm. So you also have to know kind of timing-wise, right? I mean, lots of people only go in their apiary once a month, to get 2 every colony, or once every 2 weeks. So egg and queen cup is about 9 days before the swarm. So queen cups, everyone should know this, but queen cups without an egg is a cup. Queen cup with an egg, all of a sudden, it's a queen cell, and it's going to happen. So, if you have a small larva and you're looking through your colonies, it's 3 to 6 days before a swarm is possible. And that's only if they read the same books we do, okay? So I'm just going by the beekeeper wisdom, not bee wisdom, which can do weird things. If you see cap-queen cells, guess what? They might already be gone. You might have secondary or tertiary swarms. It's never a good thing. And if you see a merged queen cell, well, you may not even notice because they might be so congested that it's already gone and you don't think it has. So it's something you really need to look at. So basically, quick bee math, you have a week. You have a week. It's so easy to underestimate and lose the strength of your colonies just because you don't have the time to get in this week or what have you. It doesn't take much time for them to get to the point where they can swarm away from your colony. So at risk for swarming. Okay, colonies with queens that are over a year old. That's why commercial beekeepers regularly kill the old queen and put a new one in. It doesn't mean that queen's bad. It's, you can have them 2-3 years, but they consider it's money for them. So it's an investment to get that new queen every year. I have older queens and they do just fine. I don't really notice that they swarm more. But there you go. Fast-growing colonies. We all want fast-growing colonies, right? Colonies with plenty of food. Right now, they should have a lot of nectar in there, and they should be pretty healthy right now. Lots of pollen. Colonies that are checked less than once a week are also at risk for swarming. And quite frankly, any colony, any size. I have nucleus boxes that are at risk of swarming right now because they only have 5 frames in there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to have an overwintered colony. Any colony, any size, and you lose track of it, see ya. So the swarm signs for environmental, basically 4 to 6 weeks prior to swarming, if you see dandelions forsythia, that's a pretty good indication. Get your act together. When you see the dandelions, you can't be messing around. And we've already passed that, obviously. Purple-eyed drones is a good key for the first primary swarms to take off. If you see, when you scrape and, open the box, you see some drone stuff. Look at their eyes, and that gives you, the time frame. Because they're not going to swarm before the queens can mate with anything. Also, hardwoods, when they start leafing out, when the maples start getting their leaves, that's normally when it starts to happen. The fruit trees and, around here, really late April, there's a little bit back and forth depending on the weather and depending on nectar flow. So really the full thing is late May through end of July is when it's really heated up with a little spike in September, oddly. This is regional, it's not national. Yep. Everything's a little different. So prevention. Reversing brood boxes in spring sometimes can help. typically the bees work their way up. And so reversing the brood boxes is, just switching them. Problem is oftentimes the cluster is smack between the two boxes. So people go, yep, I'm gonna split. And they split them, and what they just did is make two small colonies. Because there's a barrier between the two. And that can weaken them, especially with cold flashes. We had beautiful, beautiful 80-degree weathers, and then all of a sudden it went down to 20s and 30s. So anyone who got out there said, yes, I'm gonna help them grow. And they ended up killing their colonies. They get frozen out and they're going, oh, I don't know what happened. Well, there's a thing called, again, honey band, and the queen doesn't want to go above that honey band. It's a natural excluder. So you got to keep an eye on that. Giving them room early, obviously, is always a good thing, except for if it's too early. You can actually make them stressed out because they have too much space to manage. It's like, someone who likes to clean their own house, they move into a mansion, 14 rooms, it stresses out people. Sometimes a smaller condo is a little easier for us. Think of it the same way for the bees. But it's always a good thing to, once you have 6 brood frames, that's a sure sign. Get them something new, because they're going to fill that up, and the 4 on either side might be full of honey, and you don't even notice it. Because it comes and goes, right? Well, not really honey, the nectar comes and goes depending on. Okay, so equalizing colonies is one of my most fun things to do. I make nukes, and you can do it 2 ways. You can take the frame of larvae and actually brush the nurse bees into another colony or on the front step. And I love queen excluders for this. I use it as a ramp right up to the step. I put it out, and then I don't shake because I don't like to have the larva, if they flip or slide, they die. So I like the bee brush, even though it pisses off the bees royally. The nurse bees just drop, and then they start marching right into that weaker colony. It is my favorite way. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. The other thing is take the brood and the capped brood, and put all the nurse bees back into the colony you have. You can take that capped brood and put it in any colony, and boom, when that happens. All right, so question. If I have a frame with totally capped brood, how many frames of bees would I have within 10 days? 2, thank you, yes, okay, good deal. So the giving them extra work also helps prevent swarms, quite frankly, because they idle hands, they start finding something else to do. So what I do personally, all right, I'm a chickie. My muscles go downward instead of up. I'm not a Popeye, okay? So I love the idea of 8 frame boxes, but I'm never gonna cut them down because I put 8 frames in with comb. I always, on the outer side, I always put foundation, well, I'm a foundationless girl too, but I always put empty frames. So if I don't get to it in time, they still have something to work on. So every time I go back into the colonies, I take the 2 frames, I put them, if they're filled out, I put them on top in a new box for them, and I put empty frames on each of the boxes so they have a runway on either side of their colony. So it's a little bit easier for me to lift and move, and it also gives them something to do if I just don't get back to it in time. The other thing is, when you use excluders, you're limiting the brood space of the queen. So unless you have 100, 200 colonies and you're really working for the honey, us that have 40 or less colonies, it's really not that big of a deal to let the queen go up into the honey supers and keep on going. So it's individual preference. This time of year, I'm starting to put queen excluders in, but I make sure they have a lot of brood space. But unless I have 3 brood boxes, I'm all mediums too. Some people have deeps and then mediums. I just use mediums for my brood as well as honey. So everything's interchangeable. But depending on the time of year, I let the queen go anywhere she wants because it's not a big deal to go through the super box, for honey and pick out the brood frames and put them back down there. It's just not a big deal. But that's a personal preference. So you can also requeen. That's what the commercial people do. They just routinely go and take care of business. That's just part of their thing. They actually, some of them, Randy Oliver, he likes to blast all of his colonies and let the queen die. And if she doesn't die, he pinches her anyways. So that's when he does the forming blasts. And he uses a lot more than standard amounts. It dictates. So the other thing is you can provide brood breaks. I do that when I make my nuke boxes up. I pretty much force them into a brood break until they make their own, or I replace the queen from grafting, or you can let them make their own. The other thing though I do want to mention is strong colonies. If they can make their own queen, they don't want your queen. So a lot of people, they buy a mated queen and it might get rejected, and you just lost $35, $50, $45 for a mated queen. So it's always good to make sure that it's prepared. They're hopelessly queenless, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little later. Or you can give the mated queens a couple frames of nurse bees and an empty frame of brood, so she can start laying, and then you put those 3 frames in the strong colony. And because her pheromones all over those 3 frames, much higher chance. Even a really strong colony that you lost a queen in or you want to replace her, that typically works. You can do the newspaper, but they go through the newspaper so quick. I don't really think that's really matters. So splitting at-risk colonies, you can divide the colony in half. It's called a walkaway split. Or you can create nukes for a resource colony. That's a Michael Palmer term, or queen mating, and that's what I like to do. And typically it's 5 frames, either medium or deep. There's 2 honey pollens on either, or pollen on either side, and then 3 brood in the middle. You need to make sure there's good ventilation in those smaller nukes, especially if you're going to be traveling with them. So signs. So if you see a little white wax on the top of the frame bars, you gotta do something quick, because idle hands, they're gonna figure out what else to do with them if you don't give them something to do. That means they are busting at the seams if you see that little white wax right on the top. If you see the backfilled brood frames, again, remember how many cells of nectar to make 1 cell of honey? Anyone? Yell it out.
4, 5.
4. Yeah, typically 4, might be 5, but they move them around. And each time they move them, it takes a little bit more humidity out of that nectar, okay? If you see queen cells, that's pretty darn good swarm sign. And, wall-to-wall bees, if you're like, yeah, this is great, I'm gonna make lots of honey. Anything that is making you lots of honey is a definite swarm risk, because they are packed making the honey, but at a moment's notice they can leave. So it's a definite constant maintenance for them, especially in the spring, early summer. And if you see bearding when they should be out nectar gathering and pollen gathering, that's pretty good sign too. That means that they're full of capacity, okay? And of course, any feisty bees, they're letting you know something's going on, so pay attention. Maybe it's not just a bad queen, maybe there's other forces at work in that colony. So here you have, you have a queen still in there, you see her, she's marked, you know who she is, and lots of queen cells. Oh man, you lucked out. So, some people, they just cut out all the queen cells, squish, 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 and they put more space and pray. And sometimes it works. Oftentimes it doesn't, because the pheromones are out there that are telling the superorganism it's time to get out of here. So whether or not you take the queens, queen cells, you could end up with a queenless colony if you push all those a little too soon. You can also take all the queen cells out and make nukes for them, and that leaves, so basically you're taking brood with the capped queen cells. And so you're taking away the future workforce. Oftentimes that helps as well to weaken them. That's a little bit more effective. But you lose your honey maker. So if you wait that long, you can take the queen and basically splitting her off somewhere else. So you're basically making a nuke with the original queen and leave the original, the workers that are coming back, the foragers, leave them with about 2 queen cells. Any more than that, you can have secondary swarms. It's good to let a couple duke it out, but if you have 4 or 6 or 20 queen cells, you're probably going to get a little swarm there because they're going to do something. They're going to, they're not going to run around killing 20 sisters. They're going to, kill a few, and then they're going to go dance, and they're going to take some of the colony with them. So, when you do that, you can also recombine. If you are saying, okay, 3 is my limit, I've got the space for 3, I don't want any more, you can always recombine after the swarming risk is over, and that's normally a couple weeks. And so you can go from there. Or you can just leave them as separate colonies. So if there's imminent swarming, a fancy word for saying it's happening, you're not going to be able to do much about it at this point. Swarming fever is the coolest thing. Even while your gut's kind of dropping to your kneecaps. But there's actually a sound difference. They are eager, they're excited, and they skitter. It's almost like, you take M&Ms and drop them on the floor. They're skittering on the frame. It's neat to see. So, you have different options. You go, well, enjoy the moment, right? And hope that they are close enough for you to get them back in your apiary. Or you can chase with a box. Oh, anyone heard about tanging? Anyone know what tanging is? Not many people. Oh, I didn't bring it today. Okay, so there's this thing, this bowl that you're supposed to take this wood thing and go, just like the top of a wine cup. You lick and you make it sing. There's a singing bowl. That's the name of it. So this singing bowl, it's normally brass and it's very deep, and so you can take that. And beat on it to tang, or a metal garbage lid. Garbage cans aren't really metal anymore, but that used to work. Or an old pan that has a great deep resonance, and you go boom, and so you've got this swarm that looks like they're starting to create a comet, right? Not the full out, but they're starting to go together, and you're going, they're going to go that way, or they're starting to land up high. Tanging is basically making a deep resonance that sounds a little bit like thunder to them, and the vibration theoretically has them go down and start clustering. And so theoretically, you can tang them right to a box. I heard people say that. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. So every time I've tried tanging, I take out my little singing bowl and I'm like, there they go, and they're gone before I can get to them. Like I was chasing them across, the neighbor's yard and into this wall. And I'm like, drat it, I didn't get to tang. So it's kind of a fun thing to do if you like to really weird out the neighbors. What is she doing in that garbage can lid? So that's another way you can just kind of chase them. The better bet is to already have traps in place. And typically it's 50 to 300 feet. Now, this is what the books say. This is what everyone says out there. And I'll tell you what, those bees, they don't always listen. If you set up a swarm trap in your apiary, you might find that it gets full one day. If you use a little bit of Swarm Commander, it sure does help. They don't really care where it is, okay? And quite frankly, it can be in a tire, it can be on your windshield or bumper, but typically 50 to 300 feet from your apiary, different directions, and with comb, something that smells like brood, the old brood comb, and some kind of swarm lure. Some people use lemongrass and have great success. But the trick is, if you've seen them swarm to a spot before, put it there. Don't try to recreate the wheel. They're telling you where they prefer to go. And typically it's a tree, right? Because, something that is in their line of sight. So the nice thing is if you catch a swarm, not that they move into a swarm trap, but you catch it, if you put an open frame of larvae in there, they're much more likely to stay in there because they if they didn't choose the location to move in, they can move out just as easily. So instead of keeping the queen cat in a cage for a long time, all that, if you just give her a place to lay and give the workers something to do, oftentimes they like that condo just fine until you can put them in a mansion. So swarm signs, these are lovely things that you just don't want to see in your honey producing colony, because that means you're not going to make as much honey. But and most people here should have seen this before. But this little cap, I'll tell you what, I had some cap swarm cells, and I put them in Nuke, and I was in there yesterday, and it was closed, and I see these little feet trying to get through, and I went, wow, I'm watching a queen emerge. This is great. I know right where to put her. This is great, and I have another queen cell on that same frame that I can leave in this colony, and it was funny because I was like, okay, I'm going to help her out. So I helped her, and that thing flapped down, and a worker crawled right out. I'm like, what the heck, you know? So she had already emerged. There was no royal jelly in there, so I got psyched out by a worker. I don't know how they, closed the door behind her and got caught in there, but it was kind of interesting. But for anyone that doesn't know, this is one that a queen emerged. These are ones of her sisters that she gnawed through and stung, and she doesn't even wait to kill them. The sting pheromone, in my humble theory, is it actually causes the workers to attack that queen and kill her. Because I've saved stung queens before, and it was the workers that killed her, not the queen. The sting didn't, but it marked her because they are so pheromone based. When you see drones outnumbering the workers, you're like, well, yeah, they look fine. It's pretty full. But the drones are like, hey, everyone's out of the house, free Netflix and popcorn, and they all come in, and they're getting free food because the workers aren't handing out the food to them. They can just gorge themselves on that honey that's left. So that's a good indication that you missed the boat. And of course, if you see no eggs, that's the first thing you look for, right? How many people have a problem seeing eggs? Okay, so the best tool that I take out there is, other than my hive tool, is a small powered flashlight that actually scopes. You can actually push it out so that when the light's not quite right, I can look in there and it catches those eggs. It just dances right off that egg. So I highly suggest get a strong LED flashlight that you don't take in the house ever, because it's going to be propolized and nasty very soon. But just have it with your regular gear. It is a blessing to see those eggs. So one big thing is paper records are so important, because if you just have one colony, I don't know, I think I would even forget one colony. But there are definitely good tips. If any kind of record you have, a notebook, or I have a template that I print out, and every time I go in, I start a new one. Some people use brick on end to say one thing, brick on the side for another, brick flat, something else. Poker chips are awesome, different colors, but you have to have like a key so you actually remember what that visual cue is from time to time. So you should really write it down, because if you're going, what did that mean again? These requeened, or they're really good, I don't remember. So it's definitely a good idea to have some kind of record of what you did and what you need to do next time you go in there to make that from happening. Looks like I did the same thing here. Hold on. There you go. All right, so typically 70 to 90 degree days between 11 and 2, like right now, is a good time to be swarming. And they sometimes practice swarming. Heard it called fire drills, or what's the other one? I forgot what it is. But this is kind of a common thing where the swarm tries it out before happening. Sometimes the queen, the virgin queen, goes for orientation flight and comes back, but they're like, oh, yes, we're following her. And then she goes right back in the colony, and they're like, oh, man, bummer. So it is a sign that it will happen if you don't take immediate action. It might already be too late. Even if you take action, they're gone. All right, so mid-swarming, see, this is fun. All right, so the one thing is educating neighbors to call you. If you haven't done so, go around your neighborhood with some bottles of honey and a picture of what swarm looks like. Because I can't tell you, get your bees, they're on my porch, and you go and there's a yellow jacket nest, my bees, thanks. So just some education with some honey kind of smooths the way. And I always go, I go to my neighbors neighbors and say, just so you know, I have some honeybee colonies, and I want to in advance ask your permission. And they go, what are you talking about? So, well, you know, my bees sometimes swarm. I do my best to keep them from swarming, but if it happens and they land in your tree, I cannot by law go on your property to collect them. Because once they leave my property, they're wildlife. They're farm stock when they're in my yard. But once they leave, they're wildlife. I have no, you know, I need to have your personal permission because they are your bees at that point in time. And they go, oh. And so I'm setting them up. If they move into your attic, they're not my bees. So I'm kind of getting that real quick, right? So there's lots of swarm traps out there. I want to talk a little bit about that. These things are kind of crazy. They say cheap and easy. This is wonderful. Get a Tractor Supply bucket. And there's totes on top of each other, a tote with a hole. These wonderful things are sold a lot of times. They're compostable. What a pain in the butt. Oh, here's the tire. Swarm trap. Who wants to take that out? So, my humble suggestion is make sure that they have frames in them. You can get a swarm trap anyway, but why make it hard on yourself? So the general rule is it should be equivalent of a deep box. So this is one that has 5 frames. There's a deep box here, and there's a place to hang it. This is typical kind of swarm trap. You can have them small or larger than that too, and it's actually better to have small or larger. If it's a small swarm, they may not want to move into that mansion. There's too much space for them to patrol it. Typically 1-inch opening. You want to make sure that if it's homemade, put a nail, kind of like make an X or something like that to keep, birds out of there. Of course, one nail's not going to keep mice out of there. Hardware wire will. And the best thing is, honestly, you can do it anywhere. I mean, again, they move into tires, they move into mailboxes. They don't really care. They're not that picky as long as it's a space requirement and it's fairly dry. But make it easier for yourself. Swarms gorge on honey before they go. Okay, so they want to put that honey somewhere. The reason why they do that is they're converting it into wax. It's a younger generation. They have wax glands on their abdomen, and has anyone seen a young bee producing wax? It is only one. Oh my gosh! It is absolutely the coolest thing. It actually comes out of their abdomen in the dorsal sections. Where like black and yellow, where those segments are, and it comes out in sheets. And so they kind of work it out with their feet, and then another worker comes along and grabs it and chews it up and uses it to make the comb. It's really cool. So honey, eating honey helps promote the wax glands. So the first thing they want to do is build comb. So if you give them a box full of comb, they don't see that as available space. Or if you give them a box full of foundation, they don't see that as the walls of their future mansion. They see that as impediments. So yeah, they can still move in there, but you're actually much more likely if you leave an open space in the middle, so starter strips or what have you, popsicle sticks work as well, and let them build their own. You can have some foundation on the sides, give them something to do, right? So when they get their initial, when they start doing it and then the queen starts laying some eggs, then they can fill it out, get to that quick enough. And you can use an old brood comb on the side. Actually, you can take an old frame and cut it so there's just a strip of the old brood comb. That's enough. And then they can build comb off of that old strip. So you have the bait and you have the space. So that's one way to do it too. And of course, the lemongrass oil swarm commander. Now, it is so easy to go crazy. Like oh gosh, like young men in high school that discover cologne. And then all the girls are like, ooh, right? Same thing can happen to bees. They are so sensitive. Their noses are so sensitive. You can scare them away. They're going, no way am I moving in there? So you really need to be a little, very, very cautious of how much you use. Try to reapply every 2 weeks or so. So just so you know, there's about 6 or 7 different pheromones that they look for, that they're attracted to in a swarm situation. Lemongrass oil represents it is a fair equal smell to only one of those 6 or 7 pheromones. Swarm Commander, I think they do like 4 or 5 of them, including the lemongrass. So where do you put them? Obviously, set out multiple traps in spring with dandelion is the best thing. You want to have them 50 to 30 feet, right? Or in sight, don't do it around the corner, as the scouts are going out. And the scouts actually start with the dandelions looking for potential swarm places. So they do it even before they're ready to swarm. So they have kind of a clue beforehand. If you have lots of woods, sure, swarms land in deep woods, but why make it hard on them to find your particular swarm trap? Put it where they're more likely to go through. Okay, so just kind of say, okay, if I am just in line of sight, where might the best place be? If there's a row of trees, well, gee, let's have them, maybe at the end of the row, or somewhere that they would naturally go. And you definitely want to assume that it's going to be inhabited, and you're not going to catch them in time, and there's going to be 30 pounds of weight in there. So, so you want to strap it, to keep the colony up there, or to keep predators out of there that are curious and say, ooh, this sounds fun, and it smells kind of funny. I've had lots of scratches on my swarm traps. And the other thing is, the height. I see lots of pictures on Facebook. Yes, I set out my swarm traps. It's supposed to be 13 feet or 20 feet up to the ground. And they're on ladders, putting these empty boxes way up there. Not thinking, well, gee, I have to get that down somehow. And those recommendations, again, the bees aren't reading those recommendations. They will land anywhere that they think a good home is. So why make it hard for you? Put it where it's comfortable, right? Where dogs and cats aren't naturally going to get into them, right? And so focus definitely more on camouflaging it from passerbyers and interested kids, where it's not going to have you fall down trying to get it out of a stupid tree that you hoisted it up in. So catching swarms. Oh, this is so fun. All right, so you have someone call and say, hey, I've got bees, come get them. Okay, I'll be right there. What you gonna find when you get there? And so you have a paper wasp nest, and you drove 20 miles, for this sure thing, and you're like, oh crap. And especially with gas prices, there's always good things to, good questions to have. So little things is how big is the cluster size, and use fruit. Well, watermelon's kind of hard because you can do watermelons all sizes. Balls are pretty standard. Softball, soccer, beach, and so that's kind of a good idea, so you're taking the right equipment. Can you see the comb? Oh yeah. Well, what color is it? Gray. Oh, okay. What does the comb look like? Oh, it's flat facing down. Oh, a wasp. Okay. So you can get those kind of things. Is it on your property versus someone else's property, and all of a sudden you're trespassing? Small things. And if it's in a tree, can I cut the limb, or do I have to figure out how to? And they went, well, if you can keep it, or, oh, I don't care. Cut that sucker, take the limb home. All of a sudden you have a swarm lure that you can put into wherever you want them to go, and they'll probably, swarms that are emerging from your colony might very well land on that branch you got from someone else's property that has a pheromone. That's a perfect Swarm Commander scent right there. Take it home, why not, right? So the other thing is, ask if anyone sprayed or attempted removal, and they will lie about this. So you want to smell, you want to look for signs that they sprayed. Do you really want to take a swarm home that's been sprayed to your own colony and contaminate your equipment? I don't, but you've got to kind of fetch that out. And how long have they been there? Oh, they've been there for a couple years. Yeah, it's a swarm. Well, no, you got to educate. That's part of what we do as beekeepers. We want to educate others about what we do and what they are, and also save our gas money. The biggest thing is, can you take a picture? If you're not sure.
That's good.
Take a picture. Can you send me one so I know what I'm going into? And often, I can't tell you how many times the picture's so different. you know, or, the bee nest is in a wood pile. Come get them. They're definitely honeybees, definitely. Well, there's typically that's not the case, you know. But you see the bee and you're like, it's not, you know. So a lot of this stuff, Stephen Rapaski, he has Swarm Essentials book out. It's very good, and it's very succinct, which I like. So this is some stuff that Steve recommends you bring. EpiPen, we're going to have a workshop after the formal meeting is done to show you, you know, how to do EpiPen. If you don't have one, please try to get one. Talk to your doctor. Unfortunately, out of pocket, it's oftentimes $300, but they've just started doing generics, so I think the price is coming down on that. But you know what? You're in a hobby with, you know, geez, each colony's what, 60,000 venomous insects, and you're playing in there. And if someone, you know, goes in and knocks one over, they do the cow tipping thing in your yard, you know, you're still responsible for it because it's on your property. Protect yourself, protect others.
Yep, so we'll have a training station over there.
Right,
everybody
right
can practice
So,
doing it without being really injected.
Yeah. So your doctor, if you tell him you play with thousands of venomous insects and you have kids and you have a partner that may be allergic, they're more than likely to prescribe it, and then you can figure out, you know, if your insurance will pay or whatever. But it's well worth it to save a life or your own life.
CiCi.
Yeah.
I had just called, this past week, and my doctor had no problem with it. She sent it over.
Awesome.
But now I'm on Medicare, and so it was $276. And then I said, well, what about the Good RX? And the Good RX was only $7 less.
Oh, wow.
So they're right in that range.
Well, the nice thing about the EpiPens is they have expiration dates on them, but honestly, that's a good moneymaker. They also have a window on them, and where you can see the solution, and if it becomes cloudy, you pitch it. If it's clear,
That's right, if it's clear, it's good.
it's good. So, you know, I have one that's like 20 years old. I have newer ones, but I like them everywhere. I try to keep them in my jacket, you know. Yes, so the right equipment is so essential. Some things are really important as a drop cloth, because, you know, if you can shake a swarm off of a tree and drop them, ideally right into the box you're going to take home, but you put a drop cloth underneath, and so any bees that land have a much easier time marching right into that box if you get the queen in there. Duct tape is always something good. I like a queen catcher going out there because sometimes you'll see the queen. You scoop her right up, put her wherever you want, right? That's awesome. 50-foot rope is if you need to swing it over something and shake it down. You tie it to a rock or a weight or something, I don't know, and throw it up, and then you can kind of shake while you're on the ground. Now, bees have exoskeletons. They don't have bones to break. So they can land pretty hard and still crawl away and fly, okay? So, you know, that's not as big of a deal as you might think as for us. Okay, so the biggest thing is, if you're getting swarms, please be a bee advocate. You know, you are representing all of us out there. So it's always good to have extra deals because everyone's interested in what you're doing, you know? And especially if they're kids. Oh my gosh.
I said it does that,
That's right.
people will come.
Absolutely, and they have questions, and you know, try to give a little extra time. You know, be a resource, and they're more likely to call you next time too. And quite frankly, gifts of honey from the property owners, they just gave you, you know, $100 swarm. So you might as well give them something in return, right? And other people might want to buy it, you know, so it's a good time to promote your business or just, you know, promote good beekeeping. And it's always good to follow up, and you know, I'm guilty of this, you know, I don't always, but I try, but it's always good to let them know that the bees went somewhere good. And so next time they see it, they're not, you know, tempted to just spray them and get them off the property right away. They're more likely, if they know they're going to a good home, if they know they've survived and made lots of, you know, honey that year, and here's a bottle of your honey, thank you. It's a good PR effort. So post-swarm is what we do not want to have happen. Now here's the thing. All right, I'm going to put my soapbox out. Okay, I'm going to stand on it. Okay, so my thing is, bees are not normal in this area. Okay. okay? They are not an indigenous species. We brought them over here specifically as livestock, and they escape, okay? That happens. So it is upon us to be good maintainers of our own colonies to avoid problems like that, okay? It's really a shame that some people say, oh yeah, it's good to let them free into the wildlife. Yeah, the wildlife's being cut down. All those good bee trees are going away. So, you know, we have national bee trees called garages and houses for them to move in, chimneys. So let's not make, you know, a problem for our neighbors. Let's be good advocates. So if you get a call for a cutout, there's a couple things you should know about it. First off, most people don't do that for free. Second off, you can be sued for everything you own if you do it wrong. You can. Just be aware of that, okay? So if you're gonna do that, check out some legalese to have them sign. Have a liability waiver. Say, hey, you know, let them know right up front, yeah, we take a part to get the colony, you're responsible for putting it back together. I don't do that. I am not a contractor, okay? And be aware that contractors do have liability insurance, and most beekeepers don't. So you're taking a risk if you do a cutout. And you know, if you've never done any construction, you don't know about that kind of stuff, and you're saying, but I know bees. Yeah. But typically, what you want to do if you go, and again, this is courtesy of actually lots of different places online and my own experience. You don't want to use a smoker, ideally, in cutouts, because quite frankly, that makes them eat the honey. It makes the queen get skitterish and go deeper in the cutout, so you may not be able to remove her, and they might have a problem all over again if you can't get the queen out. Okay, so 1-to-1 syrup gives them gives them something to do. It wets their wings, so there's not as much flying out around, and it makes them a little bit more manageable. So it's highly recommended that you can bring your smoker, but use it as a last resort. The other thing is you need 5-gallon buckets, because you know what? Typically you take rubber bands, right? And then you cut them out in size of your deep frames or medium frames, and you rubber band them. Now, a lot of beginners make the mistake of trying to rubber band honeycomb. It is a royal mess. So most people that are experienced in doing this, they simply harvest it in 5-gallon buckets and feed it back to the bees later, or you know, extract it, or not extract it really, you know, put it in the oven and let the honey go down, the wax come up. Do it that way. And what you put in the frames are the brood. The brood is really what you put in those frames. So, endlessly entertaining, right? Something we don't want to necessarily have to do, so we want to catch it beforehand. Something we really don't want to cause our neighbors grief with. So, you know, prevention, please be a good neighbor, be a good advocate for our honeybees, and keep the brood nest open early and often, and super, 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 baby. It's always a good thing, because you never know. You put 3 supers on, all of a sudden they're full. They're like, whoa, how'd that happen? You know, hey, you know, worst case scenario is they only work and fill 1 or 2. That's okay. And swarms basically steals your honey crop. So don't do it. It's in everyone's best interest to not be a cause, be the source of those swarms out there. All right. So thank you.